Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Caviling. On this episode, are robots going to take your job? Find out more after this. All right, welcome back. This is the Caviling. I'm Ernesto.
And I'm Merrick.
As we mentioned before in the intro, we're going to be talking about are robots going to take your job? So what does that mean? Like, what specifically are we going to be talking about?
One of our favorite people to talk about is a person by the last name of Musk, Elon Musk. And he famously tweets a lot. And one of his tweets was that, robots and AI were eventually going to take over all the jobs.
Yeah, okay.
So with that, he was stating that we should have a living wage. If you don't know what a living wage is a wage that you get paid for existing.
Mm-hmm.
And
so it's like other people call it like a minimum base income, something like that. Yeah.
Yes. So this is something you get for existing. And his argument was that all the jobs would be gone to a select few large companies, and those jobs, and so everybody would need this to live.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a decent amount of research on automation. It's a fantastic thing. It's actually been happening for thousands of years. We like to think of robots as automation, but we've actually been doing automation before just robots took into place. To just go to future or recent history, we can talk about Ford, the Ford Model T.
Yep.
It was an assembly line. It wasn't really robots.
Right.
It was just a way of organizing work and keeping it moving.
I think it was probably, I don't know if it was the very first assembly line, but it was definitely probably the first successful assembly line.
And from what I could find, very large scale. You're building a big vehicle, not an assembly line of small little parts.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think one of the things was it was constantly moving, but that's outside of it. So Ford, this was in the early 1900s, it would take 66,000 workers to build 286,000 cars in a year.
Okay. So it's like, is that about 3 to 1, basically? Yeah. Okay.
Ford took it, and in the time frame of 10 years, took it to 13,000 workers to build 260,000 cars. So,
wow. Okay. That's a huge improvement.
It was a huge improvement over a short period of time, not very long. And so there's an example of automation making jobs unneeded.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people presumably lost their jobs. Right? I mean, they were displaced for sure.
Correct. Now, one of the really interesting things, this drastically reduced the price of the Model T. So while maybe people lost jobs, it actually brought cars to the mainstream. Because prior to this, cars were only for the super wealthy. They were thousands of dollars. And I don't mean like tens of thousands of dollars. No, it was like $5,000. And at that time, that was like $10,000.
Right, that was a lot of money. And this was around what era? Maybe like 1920 or something?
1905.
1905. Okay.
1905.
So $1905, very expensive.
Right. Yeah. So to give you an idea, in 1905, Ford did the plan of paying his workers $5 a day for an 8-hour day, which you at first are like, wow, $5 for the entire day.
Slave labor.
Right. It equates to about $18 an hour.
Oh, okay. So that's actually pretty decent.
It was actually a lot better than the other car manufacturers, and that was his way of retaining skilled labor. So another thing that Ford did was paid more to retain skilled labor, and they actually implemented profit sharing for their employees.
That's nice.
So let's go into the future to Tesla. Tesla is famed for having tons of automation.
Yeah.
Even Elon Musk, to his downfall, in the Model 3, claimed that part of his problems was too much automation.
Yeah.
So
ultimately, he tried to automate away just about every aspect of the production line.
Yep.
And I think he was successful in some parts, but there were definite bottlenecks to the point where he had to bring actual human workers back into the fold. And then the Model 3 production proceeded. And now they're doing pretty well. It's like 8,000 cars a week or so, maybe higher. We haven't heard the latest numbers yet, but presumably they should be hitting that 10,000 a week pretty soon.
And I am going to relinquish numbers for 2018 because those are the numbers that were out.
Yeah.
I know that 2019 should be better.
Yeah.
But in 2018, Tesla employed almost 50,000 employees. It depends on whether they had a massive layoff the week before or not. But roughly 50,000 employees and made about 250,000 cars. So let's go back to the Ford Model T, 13,000 workers, 260,000 cars. Tesla, 50,000 workers and 250. They're actually almost back to the original 66,000 workers for 286,000
So we've gone
cars
backwards a little bit.
produced.
I will say, like one difference though is that the Model T, I think, was a far less complex car to build.
Absolutely. But that would actually go to my point. We've used the automation and what it can do so we can build a more complex car.
Yeah.
So we have more features and more things in it, and we reduce the price for that. But, and this is my entire thing, companies are going to use their skilled labor in skilled ways to further increase it. They're not going to lay the people off. Well, Tesla might lay the people off, but in general, they're still going to need the people. They're going to use the automation to take away as much of the repetitive work.
Right, like the putting the tires on the car, like putting the windshield on. A lot of those jobs are probably going away if they haven't already gone away at that particular factory. So, but still, like you said, Tesla still has 50,000 employees. So if they're not building cars, what are they doing?
Right. I don't know. I actually tried to find the exact numbers for employees that build Model 3s, but that got really hard because there's engineers that kind of design on both.
Sure, yeah.
So it was actually hard to find concrete numbers. So I could only do company as a whole. So I'm sure that, the Model 3 produces more with fewer people than the Model S because the Model S is much more manual.
Sure.
But I had to lump the company as a whole.
Yeah. But presumably what's happened here is that, okay, maybe the factory jobs have dwindled over time. But what's happened is that now we have other types of jobs. We have marketing, we have engineering. Somebody has to maintain the Tesla.com website. There's all sorts of other jobs that just didn't exist during the Model T era that now exists. Like nobody was thinking about computers back in 1905.
The robots have to be maintained. Actually, I did find that the maintenance workforce in the Tesla plants is actually larger than the other. Now, not proportionate to the number of people that don't have to work on the assembly line, but it is still a larger maintenance. And the people that build those robots are in a different plant. So the robots that are being automated actually produce jobs somewhere else because they have to be produced. Yeah. So really looking into this, we can also go into farming. So I found this really interesting. In 1960, the average farmer in the US produced enough food for 25.8 people. The average farm today feeds 165 people on average. This is averaging the farms. No one has cried foul that farmers' jobs are going away. Honestly, I don't think anybody really wants to farm. There's like those people that accept it, and maybe there's a few core people that really just love farming. But in general, farming isn't something people want to do. It's something that we do for surviving.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like even those farming jobs started just kind of dwindling as well, but because there's new jobs now. So even people were afraid of those jobs going away. They've been replaced over time by more skilled labor, and
usually they're more skilled labor. So no, we'll talk about truck driving.
Right.
If you're a truck driver and you still have more than 20 years of a career ahead of you, I would start taking classes or looking at what you can do to get interested in, because truck driving probably will start to go away. It's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be anything like that, but eventually it will go away. That's probably going to happen. So, but those companies that deliver things will still need people. They'll need people to coordinate. They will need people to load the trucks. They will need all of these things to still go into it. And the more trucks that can go automated, the more help they'll need loading them. So they'll be able to deliver more stuff cheaper, but they'll need more people to do it still.
Yeah.
Also, this allows people like Twitch. There's a ton of content creators on YouTube, Twitch.
Yeah, those jobs didn't exist before at all. There's all sorts of new jobs coming up. I mean, even for instance, people that are like underage kids, under 18, can technically have a job and in some cases make millions of dollars a year. That was something that just simply wasn't available. I mean, unless you were like on TV, right? If you were a celebrity on TV. But now it's beyond that. There's a much bigger chance or higher opportunity.
Ninja, a streamer on Twitch we talked about last week, made $1 million for a day or two of streaming a new game that came out. And that opportunity, without the technology that sits behind it, would never have existed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that technology is some of the technology that's automating away jobs, because we have AI. Your call centers, Google has a pretty awesome AI that can make calls for you. So your call centers now will need fewer people to make physical calls.
Absolutely. Yep.
But they can start handling other things. I found a really fantastic presentation on graphic designers for video games. There's actually all these tools coming out to automate and make that process smoother. And it basically automates away the part of the job that none of the graphic designers liked. It was taking care of stuff that they had to do to get the end product, but none of them wanted to do it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so it really allowed them to get to designing, because these automated tools would like scaffold a building and they'd go in and design the little aspects of it.
Yeah. I mean, even in programming, we've seen huge advances like that. I mean, originally you were writing machine code, like literally like zeros and ones. And then computer languages came out and replaced that, and then higher and higher level languages replaced those, to the point now where you're almost writing English and then the computer is doing work based on words that you typed on the screen.
You and I could make a highly scalable web service in a day.
Right.
And I don't even just mean a web service. We could do that in an hour. But we could have a website and whatnot going up in a day. And that's because there's code generation, there's plugins, all of these types of things, high-level languages where we don't have to care about. There's some magic that happens. And I'm looking at you, Ruby on Rails. That's so much magic, too much magic. But these things came in and we all praise them because it actually lets us do the job that we want. All of these things automate away things that we don't want to do. They're just an ends to the a means to the ends.
Right.
The really cool, interesting things are what we want to be solving, and we don't want to be writing getters and setters for.
Right. Yeah, we don't want to get into the weeds anymore. We actually want to be productive, and I think that's what's happened in the last century. Is that human productivity has increased exponentially because of technology, automation, computer science. Everything has made it possible to move forward and not have to slave away basically every day just to produce the bare necessities.
Moore's law.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Ford also, one of the things that Ford brought in was an 8-hour workday. It used to be 9 hours prior to that.
Okay.
His was more of a motive of running 3 shifts. A 9-hour workday is hard to run 3 shifts because there's only 24 hours in a day. But he actually reduced the number of hours while increasing their pay. So another thing that I was looking into, which I think people don't, it's actually healthy for us to work. So one thing that I found out is people that go into retirement and don't have a plan of something to do actually mentally degrade and physically degrade much faster than people who continue to work. And I don't mean slaving away 10, 20 hours a day doing manual, but it's important for humans to have social interactions and to maintain thinking. The number of people that had serious problems afterwards and degradation in mental aptitude after retiring is staggering. So the stats are really bad. So I don't even think that we want people, it's not good for society, would be my statement, for people to just not work at all.
Right. Yeah. So part of the whole like universal base income issue is that I think I think people are presuming that if you had some kind of base income, then you'd be doing nothing. Like you wouldn't have an incentive to do anything because everything would be provided for you. You'd have housing and food, water, maybe internet, things like that, right? So what would you do with your life? Just nothing, maybe. What I would like to think of it as an opportunity to do things that maybe would have been out of reach. Like if you wanted to be a philosopher or an inventor or entrepreneur or something, instead of having to have a day job and slave away, you could just spend your entire time learning and doing the things that you wanted to do. Maybe you wanted to be a musician, but you can't pay the bills being a musician right now. Or you want to go into a specific branch of a particular science or art that's not popular, but you'd like to explore that. But again, it's like without making any money, you can't really support yourself. So you have to decide, oh, do I become a barista at the local coffee shop while I pursue my ideal job or thing that I want to do, or do I just give up on my dreams and do both things, or
My question is, how many do you think will actually use it that way?
It's hard to tell. I'm not sure. I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of like things like Social Security and people taking advantage of like the government and things like that and living off of those checks, it would almost seem like a lot of people would maybe take advantage of it, and it wouldn't be great. But I'd like to think that that would give people the opportunity to actually pursue something, idealistic. Of course, that kind of comes from like a more like a Star Trek utopia situation, right? Like a futuristic, like, well, you don't have to work really because there's everyone has housing. There's food replicators, so you don't have to worry about food. There's unlimited supply of energy coming from who knows what. But basically, when all of those things are met for you, the only things left to do are science or get on a vessel and go explore. Like, right, you can do anything that you want because the basic needs have been met, right? Now, in order to get that, can we get there with automation and AI and all that? It's probably a ways out.
It's probably not imminent. I would say that this is such a far off future concern that I'm not sure we need to worry about it.
Right.
One thing that we do in computer science is over engineering, or we probably do this in a lot of fields. I know the computer science one, where you design for problems that you never have.
Yeah.
And
pre-optimization.
You pre-optimize it.
Yeah.
And you never release a product because you're still optimizing it for stuff that has never come up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we sometimes do this where politicians and whatnot get into heated debates about things like this.
Yeah.
And I will say, so what?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, okay, so we're afraid of the robots taking our jobs. So we're going to pre-optimize, right? We're going to start thinking about this universal base income. Like, what if instead of universal base income, we provided free education so that people could fix these robots, right? Or write the AIs, or actually train people in these skilled trades so that they would have jobs and be able to actually provide for themselves and be functional in society and whatnot.
while I am not of the opinion that this is actually a problem that will ever happen to us, I also think that if it does happen to us, things like that are going to be the solution.
Yeah.
Or things like the platform, content creation platforms that have sprung up.
Yeah.
I feel like the human mind is a great content creator. And so anything that's not content creation, and by content creation, a website is content creation, anything new idea is content creation. Anything other than that is really something we should try to automate out. And we should leave ourselves to philosophizing and those types of things.
Yeah, things that maybe computers aren't good at and won't be good at for a while.
Yeah. I mean, even our best AIs are only mimicking the things that they've seen. They're not coming up really with their new ways. You'll see the one Facebook one where they're like, oh, we had two AIs chat and they made their own language. They actually just really abbreviated the crap out of things before it got unlegible by humans, just because of it wasn't really a new language.
Yeah, but okay, so there's this new AI. What was it? Was it OpenAI? What's the company that Elon Musk, or the open source?
Yes, which OpenAI.
OpenAI, right? So this OpenAI was able to take a sample of text and basically create a work of fiction, just come up with whole sentences and paragraphs that sounded like they were written in the tone of the original writer. So they would take a paragraph from something that maybe John F. Kennedy spoke or wrote, and then they came up with a completely different speech that sounded a lot like John F. Kennedy.
But my whole thing is, again, I don't think it's original because it sounded like John F. Kennedy.
Sure.
You can give it famous paintings. They have AIs where you can give it famous paintings and it will come up with works of art that are original, but they look like those painters.
Yeah. So you don't think it's unique enough to replace a human writing those things?
No, you're going to have
them.
a human that creates a bunch of content that it then mimics, and it will be really good at it. I mean, you could now have a John F. Kennedy speechwriter for you, and it can write speeches that sound like he would. So now if you have a movie and you want to get a speech and you want it to sound like John F. Kennedy, not only will it sound like his voice, it will also be written exactly how he would do it. And it will do a really good job at that.
Right, yeah.
But that's kind of what our AI does, is it mimics us. It's not a new thing that mimics itself or thinks on its own. It's mimicking everything that it sees from us. Take, was it called Ty, the Microsoft bot that was released to Twitter? I'm really happy that Microsoft did this.
Right, yeah.
While Microsoft should have known what was going to happen, I'm really happy that they did it. But
it basically learned from all the trolls on the internet and became a troll.
That was like, hey, we could just set up a bot to spam this with tweets. And yes, so Microsoft, you didn't think that through. But it showed us one important thing. These AIs, while they're really great, they're really just imitating us or what we feed it, the information we feed it.
Yeah, but I think to a certain point, or to a certain degree, humans are imitating other humans. But you're right. Every once in a while, you get these like really unique individuals that like drastically change the way we view art in any form.
Your Socrates,
right? Like there's so many influential people that without them we'd be stuck in the ways, would be set in the ways of the past.
I agree that 99.99% of humans are followers. We find an idol. Whether it's Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, both terrible people you shouldn't idolize. But we find these people, we idolize them, and we mimic ourselves. We read books from them on how to... This person made their life better this way or more productive this way. They wrote a book, and I'm going to buy a book and mimic them because...
Yeah, if they were successful, then I can be successful too.
I can be successful in the same way. Yeah. So as much as most people like to feel that way, I feel like most people just follow somebody. And there's probably a couple thousand people that are really change drivers and very unique and don't try to follow.
Yep.
Even the hipsters all look like hipsters because they don't want to look like anybody else but hipsters, so they all follow each other. And I think they missed the point.
Right, yeah. Well, okay, so one of the issues that has come up with the whole like AI and automation, like I do agree that I think that there is a place where eventually the people that are displaced by automation will find other jobs. But I think there's going to be short-term gaps where we're going to see some huge disruption, and there's going to be this like almost like a wake and then a hole, in the wake. For instance, like when truck drivers lose their jobs because all the trucks are replaced by autonomous trucks. Okay, sure, like we can say today that someone born today or someone, a young person today can be like, well, obviously I shouldn't be a truck driver anymore, or I shouldn't plan on being a truck driver because those jobs are gone. I need to do something else. But if you're already like 40, 50, 60 years old and that's been your entire career and all of a sudden that job's gone, it's not so easy to just like turn on a dime and change your career just like that.
It's not. I think one of the greatest things that we have right now is we have more foreknowledge. So if you're driving a truck right now, not that you need to jump ship right now. I don't think that they're going away today, tomorrow.
No, I think it's going to be a little while. Yeah.
Even 5 years, I think it's comfortable.
Yeah.
And we have this foresight. And I'm not saying that everybody's going to, have the same foresight or work, but the time is now to start planning for the future. I actually, as a software engineer, think my job will be gone in 10 years.
I kind of feel that way too. Yeah.
I don't think that I will have a job in 10 years. I'm making plans to not be a programmer in 10 years because we automate. That's what I do half the time.
That's what we're doing this show, because this is going to be our job.
I was going to say, so hopefully this show takes off, because in 10 years, we're going to be homeless,
right.
Or the cost of living in San Francisco is going to make us homeless anyways.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't think any job is safe. We're sitting here thinking, oh yeah, you should be an engineer, or you should be a doctor, or you should be something. It doesn't. No job is safe from automation and AI, really, except for maybe art and
maybe AI engineers.
Right, AI engineers. But eventually, I think the AIs will program themselves too.
Possibly. I think that's much further out.
That's far out, but it's not so far out in the future. Like maybe I think within a century that could happen. Think about how much technology has changed in the last 100 years.
I want to ask you this. Humans are decently smart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have struggled so much creating good software.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We suck at our jobs. And you think we're going to be able to write software that can write itself better?
I don't know. Maybe that's how good software will finally be written.
I think you have a lot higher of an expectation. I work with a lot of developers, and I don't think that highly of most of them.
I guess I'm an optimist for sure. But yeah, like, I think that's where it's heading. A lot of jobs are going away eventually. Not this year, not 10 years from now, maybe not even 20. But eventually, I think a lot of these jobs are going to go away, or they're going to the scope of the job is going to change a lot.
Well, I was going to say, trucks like UPS trucks need somebody to deliver the package now. Those might go away to drones, or I like the drone on a truck, so the driver doesn't have to get out and the drone can do it. I think I like that, But there's going to be different types of driving jobs, because not all of them, the automated trucks are going to be expensive.
Yep.
So there's going to be some reasons why.
Yeah, I think in short term, what you're going to see is that the long haul trucks are going to be autonomous, but then that last mile needs to be driven.
The short haul ones,
right? Well, or even when that truck has driven 800 miles and now it needs to actually dock. Maybe that's when somebody gets in and actually drives the truck and parks it appropriately and all that. I think it's going to be a while before we can fully automate the entire process.
Interstates are really easy.
Yeah, interstates are easy. It's pretty much a solved problem now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think even the Bolt can drive on the interstate mostly
right.
safely.
Yeah.
I say mostly as long as there's not a stopped fire trucks. Those are hard.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So I'm basically saying, don't worry too much about everybody that likes to bring it up and to cavil over it.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that we have done for centuries. For as long, everybody is trying to make their job suck less. And usually that means automating some portions of it. As software engineers, we have always loved getting more automation so we can do the important work and not be stuck doing this stuff. So
yeah, I think software engineers have been trying to automate their jobs away on purpose for quite some time.
We're like the laziest people.
Right. We don't want to work.
Yeah.
We want the computers to do the work for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, don't worry. There will be jobs. Not the jobs of today may not be around, but there'll be other jobs.
I mean, there wasn't factory jobs until 1905. So if you want to look at it that way, that was a new job. There wasn't software engineering jobs until 1960 something, and those weren't really jobs.
Yeah, we saw an industrial revolution, and then now the autonomous/AI revolution is upon us. But it doesn't mean that your jobs, I mean...
They'll change.
They will change. They may go away. They may change. I mean, another example is phone operators. Used to be a huge job market. Just switching people like, oh, you want to talk to Tommy? Okay, hold on. I'll connect you. And then that got replaced by a computer.
I think what people need to come to the realization is that jobs change. Yep. You look at, before 1500, most people were farmers because one farm could supply enough food for like 1.2 families. So most families had to farm,
right?
Because that's what it was.
Yeah.
We had shoemakers who one person would supply just a few people with all their shoes. Mm-hmm. And now we have factories that do that.
Right.
So
now we pay farmers not to farm.
Right, because we make too much food. It's actually true. Look that up because we do.
Yeah.
It's an interesting problem where excess food goes because we found that dumping it in impoverished areas actually just made the areas more impoverished because we killed their farmers.
Yeah, destabilizes the local economy when there's free food.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we stopped doing that because it was bad.
Right. So yeah, now we're almost at a golden age. We still have issues with poverty and hunger, so we still need to solve those in a way that makes sense, right?
And we need to be focusing on those, not will automation take all of our jobs in 200 years.
Yeah.
If automation does take literally all of our jobs, I think we can all party. I think that
yeah. Well, and I think last time we were talking about this topic several weeks ago. Who is that? Oh, hi, Josh. Thank you for watching. Last time we were talking about this, I was talking about how, okay, what if we have robots that can build really cheap housing, right? So the houses are so inexpensive that we can just put them up everywhere. Everyone can have a free house because it costs nothing. The robots can harvest the resources. They can build the houses. Okay, and then let's move towards everyone gets like these free energy drinks, kind of like Soylent, right? So everybody
or Coca-Cola
or Coke. You can survive on Coke, right? I'm sure Coke would love us if we said that.
I'm pretty sure you can breathe fire after drinking it.
Right. So if your housing is taken care of and you have food, so you have food, shelter, and electricity, presumably. Let's say that electricity is also taken care of because it's all renewable at this point. Basically, you don't necessarily have to work anymore to take care of those things, but you could. And I think that's where, okay, so if there's impoverished people, like let me use my time, my life, to help people rather than
You have too high of an expectation of human beings. I mean, right now, people could be doing that anyways.
They could be, yeah.
Just a few hours of your time.
But can you help others when you can't help yourself?
But there's a lot of us that can help ourselves.
Oh, yeah, there's plenty, yeah.
And don't help others. Yeah. I mean, as a whole, I know that there are some of us. I know that you put in a lot of time to helping others. Mm-hmm. I try to as well. But there are a lot of people that don't and aren't struggling to make it by. I'm not talking about the people that are struggling to make it by. Mm-hmm. No. But I don't know. I don't have a very high outlook for the human race as a whole. So.
I think Josh and Elizabeth are talking about
printers.
How will we always need printer repair people?
Actually,
is that what it is?
No, printers are always terrible.
Oh, they're talking about
printing
printing
food
and other things.
But actually, I think a great point is printing newspaper and printing books used to take a lot of people's time, and now the Kindle does it without printing. And printers at a corporation, if anybody has ever worked at a corporation, they never work. You're like, I printed a document. I'll get it maybe next week when they fix the printer. Yeah. If my document prints before it breaks again.
What's funny about that, though, I saw a editorial on CBS Sunday Morning about a company that makes bound books, and they're handmade. And people pay $3,000 for a handmade book because they want the feeling of like an old school handmade book.
I need to be in contact with the people that pay $3,000 for a handmade book because I have stuff to sell them.
Oh, okay.
I have lots of stuff to sell them.
There you go. Yeah. See, but that's what I mean. Like, okay, computers are taking away our traditional printed books, but there's still a market out there. You can be creative and say, oh, people still want hand-printed books? I'll make those by hand.
And I think that is the best part of the human body is the creativity mind. Our bodies aren't as good at doing things repetitively as machines. They're not as good at lifting heavy things as machines. Mm-hmm. We can build things that are better than our bodies, but our mind is still an area.
Right. Okay, well, let's see what else we got. Josh says at one point food and shelter were things that people did in communities before they were dependent on technology and electricity. Yeah, so absolutely, that makes sense. Like that's what we were talking about with farming. It's just not a thing anymore. But it did definitely build communities, and I think that's why cities kind of exists anyway to begin with.
Cities are around natural resources. You look at the borders are I mean the coasts. Mm-hmm. The coasts are there because oceans, shipping. Mm-hmm. You have shipping, which is a resource, the ability to ship, as well as natural resources. The ocean provides food and
absolutely
salt.
So cities were built around the ability to dock ships, right?
And then resources as well. Uh-huh. So you're talking about your inland ones were around rivers because power plants are easier to build around power plants are easier to build around water because they provide infinite cooling and pollution. Yes, we light rivers on fire occasionally. But this is where these communities came up, where there was the resources for them to grow and to farm. Water is important for farming, so a lot of the times, if you look, the cities are built up dominated by water. Even now, water is a crucial portion, even though we don't have to farm where the cities are. For humans to live, for electricity to be made, we need water. Looking at you, Nevada. Yeah. Why did you build a city in the middle of a desert?
Just to, I don't know, just to say they could.
Those people should be fired that built that. Like, I mean, like, seriously, what did you think when you were...
You know, that's kind of technology again. It's almost like a form of terraforming.
Yeah, we're proving that we can be here. Everybody's like, this is terrible, but we're staying because...
It's impossible. Oh, okay, well...
Now that you said it's impossible, I really want to live there. That's why Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. Not because it's great or there should be people there, because there shouldn't. Uh-huh. Gravity's off.
It's because somebody said he couldn't do it.
I was going to say, we're going to exist there purely to be like, humans live on Mars, guys. Like...
See, I told you.
Yeah, I told you humans could live on Mars.
Oh man, that's great. So yeah, I guess to wrap up the particular topic, so universal base income maybe shouldn't be a thing, but maybe we should think about how to train people to actually have the skills they need for the jobs of the future.
And yeah, I mean, we need to look at our current problems, our current problems, our education system. We can talk about our education system and the corruption and everything that goes in on those.
Student debt. That's a whole other show, honestly. Like going into debt, $40,000, $80,000.
Interesting. If you look at a Model T, it actually was a little bit more expensive than the car that I bought brand new.
Mm-hmm.
So we've actually pushed, with all the technology that we shove it into, the car price down with inflation based from 1905. We've pushed the car price down from what it was originally. So I would say everything should eventually be getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Mm-hmm. Education doesn't go with and these are the people that will tout a universal healthcare. This is what really kills me, is you'll have like professors who are like, there needs to be a living wage. And yet these are the people that are tripling the cost of higher education every 10 years. It's not even keeping pace with inflation.
Yeah, I think part of it is that there's a huge emphasis on the actual like paper, the degree that you get from these colleges, rather than the actual knowledge that you would.
What's your degree in?
In computer science.
Okay, well, mine's not, and I do computer science.
Yeah, so you don't have a degree in computer science. Yes, you're doing computer science. Nothing prevented you from doing that. And we're lucky that there's plenty of employers out there that look at potential employees based on their skills rather than the degree that they got from whatever fancy college. But still, I think in computer science and in engineering, that's like skills and experience are more highly valued than the actual degree that you obtain. But that's not the case across the board in other industries and other fields of study. So there's this almost like this impulse that, oh, I need to go to college. I need to go to that 4-year college, spend the $40,000 and get this degree, and then realize that I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, and I don't make enough money to pay back my student loans. And it's unfortunate for a lot of these new students, young adults that are now stuck with a really large bill that they have to pay back, and they're not even making the wages that they needed to.
Yeah. We can go further on to this. Right. I have my own stories, but we have problems now.
Right.
This is not one of our problems. We've been doing it for centuries, and we're not to the pinnacle where we're losing everything because of it. And so I think that when people want to bring this up as a topic, they should think about other more pressing problems.
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of other issues to solve that are problems today, not the problems of tomorrow.
There are problems that we've had 5 years ago that are still problems today.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well,
it was great chatting with you all.
Absolutely. Thanks for everyone that was watching and commenting. We encourage the comments. So just be sure to follow us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/The Caviling. We're also on YouTube as well. That's at The Caviling.
And Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter at The Caviling. We'll post some fun little things that we can't stand that people do throughout the week.
And also, if for whatever reason you can't join us while it's live or can't watch us, we're also at www.thecaviling.com, and you can listen to our podcast.
Or download it. We're on all the major platforms.
Absolutely. So thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you next week. Goodbye.